but it's like, but now I'm thinking I might want to get something that's more portable than that. So I'll have to see. I might upgrade and do the, some people use a GoPro, but it's like $400.
Yeah. Well, see, I will say, ooh, sorry. In my situation where I want to start doing a lot more photography kind of stuff, it makes sense to buy this Canon. I
Right.
just use my Biden bucks on it, and I'll put it through the business and have it as a tax write off anyway. So, um, what y'all's podcast called?
The
The
after
after
party.
party.
The After Party.
We just talk to people.
Mhm.
We talked to ourselves one night, and then ever since then we've had somebody else on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the first one I did, I was by myself, but I had people in the chat, and it was fucking weird. I hated it.
It's tough to. I tried to do a podcast a year ago. I was thinking about it, and then a buddy said, "Hey, let's do a podcast. What do you think?" Because he's a Bernie supporter, so it's kind of we butt heads, on different things and agree on things. But then I was like, I was, thinking about doing my own. So I did my own. I did one episode. It was hard sitting there just talking by yourself.
Yeah, well, see, I wouldn't actually mind talking to people who I oppose viewpoints with, but they can't be fucking crazy.
Right.
They can't be one of those people that's gonna fucking scream at you through the mic, and it's like if you want to have a logical conversation and talk, fine, I'm good with that. But if you're gonna be like, no, I'm not playing that game.
Yeah, we just our biggest disagreements on healthcare. That's our biggest. He's for Medicare for all. But other than that, we agree on things, we disagree on things, and it's usually a good conversation. We've argued
I
on
like the
Facebook for
Bernie
years.
bros a lot more than the Biden guys.
Yeah, because at least the Bernie bros, they've got a set of principles. I mean, they're terrible principles a lot of time, but they usually stick to them for the most part.
They're driven by their moral compass a lot more.
Right. There's the
The
Biden
Biden guys were like, well, at least he's not Trump.
Yeah.
Actually, that's actually a good topic to start in with. So we'll go ahead and go live here, and I'll start off and I'll introduce y'all, or I'll ask y'all to introduce yourselves and whatnot. But hey, everybody, we'll gonna go live for episode 4. I got with me tonight the guys from the After Party, Robert Hammond and Zeb Proctor. How y'all doing tonight?
Good. Howdy, everybody.
Thanks for having us on, Chris.
Yeah, man. It's always better to do these not by myself. So,
You don't like hearing yourself talk for hours on end?
I don't like hearing myself talk for 2 minutes, but here we are.
My wife says that I talk too much. When the kids get in trouble, she says, you talk way too much. But I don't like talking by myself. So thoughts are usually inside the head and not coming out vocally. Whereas my wife, she'll sit over here at her computer and start talking, and I'm taking my headset off. What you want, honey? Oh, nothing. I'm just talking to myself. Thanks.
Well, I'll talk to myself at work, and I'll tell people, I'll say, hey, uh, you I'll say, oh, that doesn't look right. That looks stupid and whatever. And somebody say, who are you talking to? I was like, I'm getting expert advice.
There you go.
So I do want to touch back on something we was just talking about, and that's the Bernie Bros versus the Biden, I guess, militia, whatever you want to call them, the Biden camp. Um, uh, just give context, people.
Just call it the not Trump group. Just call it that, because they don't even rep Biden. They're like, Biden's not my dude. I just voted for him. He's not my guy. It's wild.
Yeah, basically, yeah. What we were saying is, Bernie Bros. At least they stand by their morals. They'll stick with Bernie, and his policy, or they'll call out, bad policy, whatever. But they may end up voting, for Joe Biden, may not, but they'll call out bad policy typically when they see it. But the Biden, or as Zeb put it, the not Trumpers, basically just voted for Biden because they just didn't like Trump.
Yeah, he wasn't going to tweet mean things.
he can't remember what his Twitter login is, so I don't know if he can.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty funny. At this point, I think they're just like trolling them. I think they're just like, I don't even, it's the wildest thing ever to see how people, when you bring up, Biden and, him backtracking on things, and just honestly is horrible track record. Like, I don't know if you could pick another Democrat within the majority that has a worse record than Biden. Truly. And the Bernie guys at least have, like you said, kind of like principles, because, Bernie Sanders during segregation was there getting water hosed and walking in Selma, and or maybe it wasn't there, but he was a part of that movement. And Biden was voting on, with Dixiecrats. He might as well have been a Dixiecrat for a while. So it's funny seeing that shift. And like you said, there probably are a lot of Bernie bros that voted Biden just because of Democrat policies in general, or socialist policies in general. But I don't know. They're different than the not Trumpers. It's weird. It's just a weird time.
So yeah, the not Trumpers are a very spiteful group. It's not so much the policy; it's just they're anti him, and you see in a lot of that from the Republican Party when Obama was in office, which was the anti-Obama group or whatever. They didn't care what he was pushing; they just hated the guy. And
Right.
you can be for whatever you want to be. I don't care, but don't cry when somebody makes fun of you for it. And and you see, one thing I do want to say too is that you look at the Bernie Bros, and then you look at the Trumpers and the Trump camp. It's a very different aesthetic as far as how it goes. From my experience, Trumpers will absolutely, that's one of the things that really turned me off to, the duopoly, and that really forced me hard into the Libertarian Party. Was these people were making excuses for Trump that they shouldn't have been making excuses for. He was saying shit that he shouldn't have been saying, and I was like, but you can't say that he's wrong and just admit that he's wrong and then just move past it. Well, no, he, because it's us versus them, and I was like, that's stupid. That's a stupid way to be. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. It, I mean, people are wrong. Every politician is wrong 90% of the time, but and it's just it drove me nuts, and that's what really pushed me away from it. I think that's what's really done a lot of people in too. Is you'll see mainstream media, bend over backwards to lick Joe Biden's nuts and make him look good, but yet if he does something wrong, they'll cover it up. Somebody, maybe a Republican does something good, an actual good piece of legislation, they hide it. They'll pretend like it doesn't exist, and it's just this big game of cat and mouse of who's got the power, and it's pathetic, and I think a lot of Americans are really just done with it, and that's why I was saying, the Bernie Bros at least stick to their principles. They followed the man because of who he is and what he stood for. He's been consistent. Now he may be a commie fuck, but at least he stood for that the majority of his whole life.
He is consistent.
Mhm.
And I think the last two elections have gone down to a lot of, I'm not voting for somebody, I'm voting against somebody else. I got a lot of Christian conservative friends that voted for Trump that I would have never expected to have voted for someone like him. I would have thought they would have said, no, I'm not voting for a man of his moral capacity. Not going to happen, but they did anyway. And I think it comes down to, they feel like their version of America, what they want to see in this country, is under attack. And Trump stood up and said, I'm going to defend your version of America. And they got in line behind him, and they'll go anywhere with him now.
And that
I
is
think what's interesting, Chris, is that you mentioned, a lot of people are fed up with it. And I think they are, but the problem is that they don't have a product with the Libertarian Party that makes them feel safe or justified in voting. And a lot of the issue is that we got to shift this focus, that we got to have the government fix our problems. Like we got to legislate morality to fix our societal problems, which we all know that's not going, you're not going to legislate that. You know, you got to get the church involved in the communities. You know, you got to do more outreach. You got to be what the church used to be. And that's not to say that there's not a lot of churches out there doing it, because there are. Now, you've got your predatory pastors like the Joel Osteens and stuff, but it's got to be a grassroots movement, you know. And I think politically, people will say, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, you know, Christian conservatives tell me, you know, I'm really a libertarian at heart, but I don't have anything to vote for there. So I'm going to vote against this. And I'm not sure how you get that messaging across, or maybe it's a question of candidates, but we got to break that, because I was really disappointed in the outcome of the election. You know, and Spike Cohn will say he's one of my favorite libertarians ever. Love to hear that guy speak, but even he said it was underwhelming, the number that voted. Yeah. I don't know what the answer is to get that out there, because it's a real uncomfortable conversation too. People I go to church with like know that I'm the libertarian of the church, and we do podcasts, we talk about it, and very active with you guys, and it's something different. They don't know, they're kind of offset by it. I don't know. What do you think?
So I think the one thing I've noticed, mostly in the Libertarian Party, or you know, people who are in the liberty movement, is they will get disheartened. Some people, I shouldn't say they. Some people will get very disheartened very quickly. Like the LP will push a certain policy or a certain stance on something, and they don't agree with it, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm done. I'm going back to my political priors. You know, I'm going back to the Republicans or the Democrats because you know X, Y, or Z policy." And the way I've always looked at it is this. And I'm not going to say the guy's name. I try not to do that because you know I'm not going to say anything bad about him. But I was having a discussion this morning when I come off graveyard with this gentleman on Facebook, and I said, you know, you can. So this, okay, let me preface with this, is that they were saying that they're more for like a communal society, whether it be at the federal level or at the local level. So pretty much it's like a non-authoritarian socialist. So they're kind of like, I would say, probably closer to like the Green Party. Um, but I said, well, okay, I can get behind that as long as you're talking about non-authoritarian stances. I said, if you and your neighbors decide that we're going to all pool resources and, you know, basically community, like at a community level, uh, pull resources and take care of each other, that's fine. The problem I have is when you then try to use force to force somebody else into that idea. You know, if you and your neighbors want to do that, that's fine. Whatever kind of life you want to live, that's fine. My problem is when you try to force it into other people. And so we spoke on a few things, and the one thing I think that, you know, if you're going to be in the liberty style movement or the Libertarian Party officially, is you just got to focus on the main topic, which is removing authoritarians from your life, whether that be the state, whether it be, you know, unions or companies or whatever. Being free means nobody can dictate to you what your life is going to be like. And you know, there's a lot of different ways that people look at that and different, you know, with different interpretations. Um, but a lot of people get disheartened over like one small piece of policy. And I've seen a lot of people, you know, moaning and groaning over the BLM stuff. I'm like, well, BLM's right, but they kind of had the wrong target. You know, they wanted to protest, and, you know, some of their members, I'd say a very small portion of them, were burning down, you know, private businesses. Wrong target, right message. And then, you know, you kind of you move forward through the summer, through the winter, into January, when those guys, those idiots, stormed the Capitol building. Right target, wrong reason. So there's a lot of that. It's just I think the biggest problem we have in the Libertarian Party is retention. I think some people get disheartened real quick, and over, like I said, over one piece of legislation or one policy stance, inactivity. Um, like the entire time in 2020, I don't think I've seen one official statement from the National LP about being anti-lockdown. They finally come out and said something, I think, a month ago. But a lot of people were pissed off about that. Like that's a ginormous like authoritarian stance is lockdowns. Forcing people to stay in their homes, shut down businesses, and the LP just disappeared. It's like they faded into the background, like nothing ever happened. Like, nah, we're not going to say nothing on this. And that's
They should have been all over that one.
absolutely prime example of being anti-authoritarian right there is saying, hey, lockdowns are stupid. We can do this without forcing people to go bankrupt, lose pretty much their life savings in the business that they run, and they would just ghost. And I think stuff like that needs to be fixed. That's minor stuff. It is, but it has large waves. Those little ripples create large waves, and I think stuff like that really turns a lot of people off too.
Yeah, people have a disagreement, like you said, with a policy or two within the Libertarian Party, and I agree with 90% or whatever the percentage is the person agrees with, and they'll leave over that 10% and go join with the Republicans that they disagree with 40%, but they're much more likely to have a successful election and vote for a winner and get 60% of they want instead of 90% of nothing, or 0% of 90%, So I think that tends to drive people away, is that the lack of success and the disagreement on small things shouldn't be something to drive somebody away, but that's what it comes down to with some people.
Yeah, and one thing you see a lot of, like Spike Cohen, he pushes for a lot of like local races. Um, like here in Tennessee, we got Trisha Butler out in Clarksville. We got Rob Burke running out in Hamblin County for Morristown. You know, starting there and then growing up from there. Start at local city races, county races, maybe get a seat in the state house. Moving from there on, that's how you have to start it. You can't expect to have maybe 100 elected libertarians across the country and then just win the presidency. That's not something that's going to happen. That's not realistic. Never has been, never will be. Um, but getting out there and supporting local races, in my opinion, is a lot easier and a lot more efficient than supporting a large political race like we've seen in 2020. With Joe and Spike running for president and vice president. Because once you get that base, that group of people who will vote libertarian no matter what, and you can expand it year after year, and you can only do that by having local officials who are showing what the LP can do at the local level, and then they'll be like, hey, you know what, I kind of like what they're doing. Let's expand this out. Let's make a libertarian governor. Let's put a couple libertarians in the state house. You keep doing that in enough states, and you do that at the local level long enough, it won't be hard to put somebody in the White House or in Congress. You just got to start somewhere, and you can't start at the top and work down. It's got to be bottom up.
No, absolutely, I agree, and I think on a local level, I think a lot of that starts with it's kind of a revolution in education, shout out to the guys. What was the For All Tennessee organization, For Action Tennessee, Justin Cornett and Eckel over there. That education and that segue into, on important issues like civil asset forfeiture, jury nullification, ballot access, rigged subcommittees that kill a bill, even though it had the right votes to go through. All those things, I think we have to educate people, or at least show people, hey, look at this, what's going on. I know that you're mad about kids in cages on the federal level, and I know we're talking about a lot of other stuff on the federal level. let's talk about a little bit what's going on a local level, and we got to get people to care about that too. The media, the national media, has done such a good job in fear mongering and making it about, this vote is absolutely right because that vote will ruin the country. That candidate will ruin the country, or vice versa. So it never becomes a discussion where it's talking about the issues. It's just a name calling contest. And it just goes from there. And it's funny because we talk about, us older, like not necessarily our generation, but when you get older, especially, you can look like maybe perhaps the boomer generation. It's really easy to blame the new generations. Well, they're weak or this or that, but everything they do is a reflection upon what the older generation is doing, the precedents they've sent. And I think social media, I swear, if back in the 1970s, if you had Wi-Fi and Facebook and everything like you did, we would have the same problems then with social media that we do now. It's really just a reflection upon what the duopoly and the biopic view of politics has made, to where you have this impasse and people just vote on identity politics, on fear. There's no discussion on issues. So we got to get people interested in issues and make them understand why it's relevant in the local context. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to do that because that's hard. I think the issue that really threw me to the Libertarian Party was Trump did not pull out of any wars, and the economy just suspending, like the biggest government under the Republic ever was under Trump, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, those two things just kind of showed me that this is all a charade. Like, no matter what you say, you're not going to do it. Drain the swamp, and you have Mitch McConnell in your ear. So I don't know how to get people out of the fear of identity politics, but we got to get them focused on, like you said, local issues, local politics, and that looks a lot different across the nation. That's going to look differently in Illinois than it does in Tennessee or in Alabama versus Nevada, wherever else.
Yeah, if the Libertarian Party can get their people like Echo and Cornette, getting a group together like that, or even if it's not an official group, just individuals of the Libertarian Party to go after their local or state elected officials for specific laws, bills, ordinances, or whatever. Don't try to, take over the governor. Go pound your state representative about civil asset forfeiture. Work with the Democrats or, liberty leaning Republicans to get that taken care of. And it's going to be different than in, say, New Jersey or something. They might be working with the Democrats more there to get something done. Whereas in Tennessee, they're frequently going to be working more with Republicans because we're a very Republican state. We got I think the Republicans have a super majority in the state house and state Senate. So we're going to have to work with them to push the agenda we want through the grassroots effort, not through necessarily getting elected until we get some of those local elections won. So, and it's going to be different in each state because, you can work with the Republicans all you want in New Jersey. You're probably not going to get anything done because the Democrats are going to control that. So it's to get things done, it's going to have to be local, and it's going to have to be hounding the majority party that you can get some of the things you want, even though you're not going to get others.
Yeah, I think one thing too, I don't want to call it dirty politics, but I want to say that it is personal accountability on the political level. And, Republicans harp, and I'm talking harp on gun rights. They'll say, oh, we care about your guns and making sure that you have the right to, bear arms and all that. But then they'll say, oh, well, maybe we do need to expand, background checks. We need to do cavity searches before you buy a gun. Something stupid ass thing like that. And beat them to death with it. Say, look, if you're going to say gun rights, fine, let's talk about gun rights. Let's talk, why are you saying that, there should be a ban on this or that or whatever. Why is Tennessee a Republican majority, but we don't have a constitutional carry law? Like, you have to pay, prior to last year, you had to pay, what is it, almost like $200 to get a carry license that's open or concealed. And there was so many loopholes and not loopholes, so many stipulations to it, so many regulations behind it. And it was crazy. Like, you can go into certain places, but you can't go into other places. If you got to have this sign, but if it doesn't have this on it, you don't have to care, and beat them to death on stuff like that. And then, like you said, libertarians and democratic strongholds beat them to death on their policy. Stuff that we believe in, that they talk about, beat them to death on it. Say, oh, you're for open borders. Let's talk about that. Say, okay, well, why do you think that we should still have the INS or ICE or the Department of Homeland Security? Because the Department of Homeland Security would encompass all of that, but yet the Department of Homeland Security oppresses in a lot of ways the American people and foreign nationals who were on U.S. soil and not on U.S. soil. Beat them to death with stuff like that, and it's beating them with their own policy. They're going to say, we believe in this. That, okay, I'm gonna hold you to that standard. Then do it publicly. A lot of people don't like that. They're like, oh, well, it's a violation of the NAP. I don't think it is, because if you go out on Main Street and you hold a sign that says LGBTQ plus, whatever the acronym is today, this day of the week, whatever, and then but you're wearing a shirt that says, there's only two genders. I mean, beat them to death with that. Say, okay, why do you think there's only two genders and this and that? It's stuff like that. If they're going to push a political stance, but they're not going to actually, fight for that stance, beat them with it. Show them why they're wrong. They'll either change and they'll conform to what they're saying, or we can run somebody against them saying, hey, look, we actually believe in these things. We actually believe in gun rights. We actually believe in, uh, open immigration, all this stuff. And it's just, it comes down to being, I think, a little bit more aggressive, like Justin and Josh have been, just being more aggressive in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, at the we talked about doing this stuff locally, but the presidential race we're never going to win. Well, not never, but not until we get some groundwork put in first. I think the libertarian presidential run should be put there to win, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what kind of, there may be something happen with the two candidates, and a lot of people are just like, I can't vote for that. And then they walk away and they vote third party. So you got to always be ready for that. You got to be working to win, but you got to know that it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. So the most important thing with that presidential election is sending a message, sending a radical libertarian message that we are not like these two. We may share some policies with the Democrats or some policies with the Republicans, but we're for freedom all the time, all your freedoms, no matter your gender or your race or whatever, your religion. We don't care. We're for all your freedoms all the time, and spread that message. Don't come out in some lukewarm message about civil asset forfeiture or this or that. It's like the lockdowns are wrong. They should have, the campaign should have been pounding that the entire time, because would they have gotten many Democrats with that message? No, but that's our principle. You do not lock us down. You don't have any legitimate authority to lock us down like this. So knock it off. Are you going to win some Republicans? Probably. You're probably going to pick up some Republicans in places where their Republican governors were doing lockdowns and not letting the people exercise their freedom. So that presidential campaign is a huge messaging center that was not taken advantage of, I don't think, this time, and it wasn't taken advantage of the last couple of times. We need somebody like Harry Brown back. Freedom. Give us freedom. We can handle it, but not this lukewarm stuff like we've had.
Well, I think, and I know this is a dead horse, but I'm gonna beat it a little bit anyways. if you look at Ron Paul, how he ran his campaign, he said, "I don't care to run your life. I don't know how to. I don't want to. I just want to give you the ability to run your own life. I just want to give you the freedom to run your own life." And that is the message we should stay on. Um, a lot of people can get out in the weeds about policy, this, that, and the other thing. But I think that's a far better message than saying, "Hey, we've got these two obese guys who are like yelling at each other on stage, a couple months ago, who don't know where they're at or what they're talking about." And I know y'all probably seen it, but after that first presidential debate, the LP National website crashed because so many people were flocking to it,
Right.
like trying to like look at policy, and it just melted down. I can only imagine how hard those poor servers work, and the two racks that they had running that maintains what we have now. But I know that it had to have been working overtime because I watched it and I was like, I, I I don't even know what country I'm in anymore. This feels like some kind of weird Stephen King horror film. I said, this is like it's like it's a dead man fighting like it's like the kid who got bullied in high school died, and now he's fighting his bully, and that's really what it just felt like. And it was the weirdest thing ever. And that would have been a prime time, to come out and say, "Look, if you like this policy, that's fine. Just don't force it on other people. We don't want you to force your life's choices on other people. We don't want you to force your decisions on other people. We don't want you to force your religion on other people. If you want that, that's fine. We don't care. Just don't force it on other people." And
I think the reality of it though, and why, and ultimately the messaging failed, even though I think Georgeson is a very principled libertarian. I enjoy her, and I really think Cohen is great. But the reality of it is the media and also past generations has set the precedents that we have to vote to rule over the other half, or the other half will ruin our life. There's no live and let live anymore. There's essentially the black flag in their minds and what they think and how they register things. Like that's where you see all this like really accelerist narrative comes from, these guys that have to go on the fringe extremes, because that's what the media and past generations have driven home, that you have to vote this way to rule over the other half, because if you don't, they're going to do this if their guy gets in. And they've forgotten the roots that America was based on individuality, state, very states' rights, if you want to put it in terms like that. And there's a lot of different ways that looks like. I think another problem libertarians run into is that a lot of times you'll get libertarians in different factions and sections, and this is something I've encountered on both sides, from like kind of the right-leaning libertarians and very left-leaning libertarians, that there's almost like a purity test to get in, to hang out with this club. And a lot of people aren't up to speed on Austrian economics. I'm just gonna be real with you. It wasn't until I went to a civil asset forfeiture campaign where I finally bought in and was buying some good books, reading on economics in one day in one book. I can't remember the
One lesson.
Henry. What's the name of that book? You got it?
Economics
Robert?
in One Lesson. Henry Hazlitt. One of the
guy's
best books
great.
ever written.
yeah,
I mean, it really breaks it down. But my point is, a lot of people aren't familiar with that. So that shouldn't be a go-to litany test of whether or not someone's a libertarian. And then also you got on the left side those guys that if you don't completely agree with my view on gender identity or whatever they're calling it today, then you're infringing on my rights. And the extreme takes that if you disagree on this, then that makes you transphobic or whatever. These extreme litany tests of getting in has scared away a lot of people. I can't tell you when I was doing another podcast before I was with the After Party, me and Robert started this up. Before that, I introduced some people to libertarianism, you know, into the group, to the libertarian page of Tennessee. And, you know, I would say on let's say out of 5, 3 out of 5 would come back and say, man, there's no way I could fit in with those guys. Like, I agree with like a lot of what you're saying, but this one issue, you know, somebody would disown me for it or throw me, you know what I mean? So they we have a messaging problem with where we're trying to bring people in, whether it's from the left or the right. When we're trying to bring them in, they get scared off by one issue that maybe somebody drives home too much. Like, for example, like it should have been lockdown, should have been what our messaging was, should have been other things. We got to find some more unifying messaging that includes, you know, rights for everybody. That's what we're talking about. And that's another reason why I can't agree with both of you guys more about the grassroots movement, that if we could get people to understand, you know, tyranny can happen on a state level and we need to fight that. And that's worthy of fighting, because if you fight it there, when it comes down from the federal level, you're more likely to use, you know, constitutional rights like nullification and stuff like that to fight it, you know. But you got to do it on the grassroots level first. So I think a lot of the problem is we kind of run people off sometimes too. I'm not saying us three, like we would never be guilty of that, you know. And I get into it sometimes too, you know. I just think that's something libertarians on average could probably do better about, is trying to be more inviting, inclusive, and say, yeah, it's okay. You're not familiar with this or this. Let me show you this about it. You know what I mean? I'm not sure. Does that make sense?
It does. There's some people take a long time to become fully libertarian. It might take them decades or years, and some people just, they read it and they're like, poop, I get it. I understand. But you don't want to bring somebody in, like say from the left and say, well, if you don't agree that I can't have a machine gun or a tank, then you're not a real libertarian. Well, they're gone. Well, if you give them some time to actually process it, you know what, this gun rights thing is really, you know, people should be able to own guns. And then eventually, well, that whole assault weapon thing isn't right either. So they should be able to, it's a fake term. People should be able to own whatever guns they want. And oh, really, machine guns and felon? You know, you can't run them off when they first walk in the door. You got to let them come in, look around, see that you're welcoming. And you know, it's the same way from the right. Like, oh, you want to legalize weed? No, we want to do heroin too. All right, he's gone. You know, how about just let people come in, let them. And you know, I've seen some hateful posts about, you know, this side or that side, and it's like, you're not welcome here. You're not. And I've had people tell me, you know, based on the messaging from, I won't say the left or the right side of the spectrum here in Tennessee, they're like, I don't feel welcome in the Libertarian Party because they don't, my type's not welcome. Well, your type is welcome. They just, some people are a little extreme this way and some a little extreme this way, but a lot of us are kind of overlapping here in the middle, and you need to hang out with us because you're welcome here, and you just got to kind of ignore the fringes.
So my litmus test, and I'm not gonna lie, I have a litmus test. My litmus test is, do you want to see the federal government reduced? I don't ask how much. Do you want to see the government involvement in your life reduced? Could be a little bit, could be a lot, could be all the way, you know. You know, I got a lot of people I talk to that are anarchists. I've got people that I talk to that are minarchists. I've got people that I talk to that just, they don't think the federal government should be as big as it is, but they don't know quite how far down they want to go. I can get behind that. You know, those are people I'm willing to talk to. You know, policy, you know, if you want to talk about, you know, socialism without an authoritarian stance, I'm willing to talk to you. If you're willing to say, you know, I'm open for socialism without the government force of it, fine. We can have that discussion. You know, the problem is when you have a government that's as large as ours, you can't say that, you know, you want to do one thing for the good of all of the country while you're forcing it on other people. That's immoral. Now, if you say, oh, well, me and my friends, we want to do this, but the federal government prevents you from doing it because they're like, no, we'll see, our party won last election, so we're going to force you to do this. That's immoral. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat. It really, to me, it really needs to be about understanding that I want to let you do what you want to do, as long as you don't affect what I want to do. If you're not going to force your beliefs on me, I can't force my beliefs on you. And like that's where I was going with earlier was, you know, if you want to set up a commune in your neighborhood, one guy grows weed, one guy makes bullets, one guy makes guns, one guy makes corn, one guy makes potatoes, one guy grows cows or, raises cattle, but you all share resources, that's fine. But don't come into my neighborhood and say, "Oh, well, we need to have, you guys have apples. We're going to take your apples." That's not cool. The same way on the flip side of, kind of on the opposite side of the political spectrum, you shouldn't be allowing a company to come in and take somebody's resources for, pennies on the dollar if they're not cool with it. If they're just like, well, we're making, pennies on $10. Yeah, well, we'll take pennies on the dollar. If it's voluntary transaction, if it's a agreed upon by both parties to make that agreement, that's fine. But once you start using government force, that's the problem. And that's the key message I try to pass along to everybody is that is my litmus test is, are you willing to let your neighbor do what they want to do? As long as they let you, as long as they leave you alone. If they say yes, then we can have that discussion. You and I on an individual level can have that discussion about minor policy. And what I consider minor policy, a lot of people won't consider it this, but where do you draw the line at right to bear arms? I have a standard that is basically anything that you can physically carry. Because there's that straw man argument. Oh, so you think Jeff Bezos should be allowed to buy nukes? No, it's not an arm. It's a piece of equipment. You can't carry a nuke into battle with you. So anything that you can physically drive or carry into, your house, I think you should be allowed to have. Nukes, a little bit different. They don't fall under the classical definition of arms. But I wouldn't be opposed to somebody saying, "Oh, well, I want to buy one just for shits and giggles." Oh, whatever, I guess. But the argument that I always make is, as long as you don't have any intent to use it, or you don't have any, understanding of using it against your neighbor, that's my litmus test. It's just, if you're willing to leave me alone, I want to leave you alone.
I have that socialism thing you were talking about. People say, "Well, I want Medicare for all." Almost always from the left, and I'm like, you can have that today. You can. There are organizations out there. You could insurance organizations. I can't remember the names of them right now, but they're usually religious based. But you can go in and set up your organization. People donate, you contribute money. If you get sick, then the people send money to you, and you're taken care of. It's a health share. Some of the name of them, and do that. Set it up. Make it Medicare for all. Set it up. Do it. Just don't force me to join it if I don't want to. If it's good, I will absolutely join it in a heartbeat. But my problem comes in is when you want to make me join it against my will, just like you were saying, like the commune. It's the same kind of thing. And they could do this, but I've never had one say, "You know what, that's a good idea. I'm going to go do that." No, they go right back to, "I'm going to use the government. I'm going to vote for people that will use the government to force you to join my Medicare for all that I want." And they never follow the chain of, they don't see it as violence. They see it as helping people, but it comes down to, you say you're going to do this. What if I say no? Well, you're going to fine me. And if I don't pay the fine, then you're going to come arrest me. If I resist getting arrested and locked in a cage, they're going to kill me. Mm-hmm. At the end of it, all of those wonderful programs are backed up by violence. And that's just, it violates, well, the NAP, the non-aggression principle. And because that's at the end, it's violence, all of it.
So have you watched that documentary on Amazon Prime Video? It's called The Monopoly on Violence. either one.
I have started it, but I haven't gotten
That's
all the way
actually,
through it.
as soon as this is over, that's what I'm going to watch tonight.
It is fucking phenomenal because it actually covers health insurance. So it talks about prior to 1920, prior to, Woodrow Wilson's, basically socialism in America programs. It talks about 1 in 4 Americans were a part of a fraternal organization. Somebody somewhere is going to be screaming and crying because I said fraternal, but there are organizations that you can join where they keep a doctor on retention. You pay a flat fee once a year, and it's not even anything crazy. It's something like, I want to say the Masons are like $150 a year, maybe 1,000. But shit, I've got good insurance and I pay more than $1,000 a year. And these doctors will fight tooth and nail to retain that contract. That doctor messes up, they're not a good doctor, they lie, they try cheating, they're out. They lose the contract, and it's an annual based contract. That's something that could easily be done now. Most Americans can afford, some kind of payment method, not even necessarily $1,000, but like, a couple $100. Shit, everybody has a smartphone. Everybody. And I don't care who you are, what you say, you've got some kind of phone in your pocket. That's money you could reallocate towards, an organization, whether it be a fraternal or maternal, if that's, a thing. But
fraternal is just the name they've always been given them.
Because it's typically male dominated.
The Elks Club, the Moose Clubs, the Modern Woodmen, that kind of thing. I mean, heck, Fred Flintstone was in one. I can't remember what it was called though. But
it was something. Yeah, it was like a play on the Moose Lodge or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
But something like that. These organizations basically kept these doctors on retention, and you could show up at any point in time, or you call that doctor and say, "Hey, I need you to meet me at the lodge," and they'll show up. And it's not like, one doctor for the entire organization. It's one doctor for that lodge or for that clubhouse, or whatever you want to call it. And that doctor could prescribe stuff, treat, basic things, something you'll go to see your primary care or like an urgent care for, anything that you don't necessarily need an ER for, or a surgical center for. And, that's where most people spend their money at is, I'd say most Americans spend a lot, most of their healthcare dollars at, like an urgent care, or they go to the ER for like, a hangnail or, a broke leg. But that stuff a primary care could handle. And something like, like a Masonic lodge that has a doctor on retention, people could handle that. And those fraternal organizations have gone by the wayside because, they don't necessarily need that healthcare anymore because it's either government subsidized or work subsidized or whatever. But, if somebody walked up to me right now and said, "Hey, give me $1,000 and we'll take care of your medical bills for the rest of the year, as long as it's like, urgent care related stuff," and I knew that they weren't bullshit and they weren't going to run off with my money, I crank out my wallet right now. I'll throw it at them.
They've got the modern, it's not the modern equivalent, but a modern version of that kind of thing is I can't remember the name of it now. My wife has one called Black Bag Medical. It's in Johnson City. But they're it's a cash pay doctor, and you pay so much a month, and you can go to the doctor as often as you want. You need stitches, it's free. You need a checkup, it's free. You need whatever minor thing they can provide in the office is all free. It's taken care of under your monthly fee. The only thing they're not going to be able to do is if you have a heart attack or a stroke. Those major things. X-rays, cheap. They outsource them. They get a cash discount, super cheap. Things that the one that was on a podcast, the lady she was paying $500 a month for a cancer medication. She had breast cancer, and she was paying $500 a month for this medicine. And then she was exploring options, and she talked to this doctor, and he said he did the research, and he's like, "Well, I can get that for $5 a month." He's like, "I'll just include your cancer medication as part of your monthly thing. So now he provides X cancer medication as part of your free thing. And the thing is, he's not making money on the medicine. So they charge like, whatever it costs for the medicine, plus like an additional 10% up for the ordering and the, keeping some on supply and that kind of thing. So it's a much better system. If you were able to do that combined with a high deductible insurance, like, okay, fine. I gotta have a $10,000 or a $20,000 deductible. I'm good with that. I'm only going to go in if I have a car accident or a heart attack or a stroke or something, or some serious cancer. Other than that, all my stitches, my checkups, everything's going to be taken care of under my $100 a month fee or whatever it comes out to be. I think my wife's is like $65 a month or something. You can do a whole family of four for like $150 a month, and everything's taken care of except for your serious stuff. But that's kind of like that fraternal order thing you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, if you look at, the fact that if you could reduce the amount of taxes you pay on your paycheck by removing that need for like, Medicare, Medicaid, and, like a Medicare for all plan, you can dictate what kind of plan you want to be involved in. You can have that choice, and you're also keeping that money in your pocket. Like you said, you've got that plan that you was describing there. Well, you're paying so much a month. What it's going to cost you. God forbid, you get into a car accident and you got a broke leg and you need some stitches. They got to cut into your leg and reset a bone, break a bone, reset it, whatever. You're not paying 40% taxes now. You can actually afford those kind of things. You can save that money to pay for that kind of stuff,
Right.
or you've got enough liquid assets where you can, sell that stuff off and pay for that stuff. And that's the thing is people don't understand is, uh, the more government gets involved, the more costly it gets and the less efficient it gets. And that's just the one thing is like I said, that's my one litmus test. Don't force it on other people because someone somewhere has a better idea that will always work better than what's current. Even if you look at it and you're like, oh my God, that's the best idea anyone's ever had, someone's got something better. Or they're gonna lose money to compete better. People hate Jeff Bezos because he's so rich. The first 5 years of Amazon, being incorporated, they lost money because they were willing to lose money to gain on the back end. Look at them now. Somebody else is willing to do that in order to create a better, a better medical system. So I mean, yeah, it's just there's always something better out there. But when you force your personal beliefs on somebody else, you don't have that option.
I think unfortunately a lot of people just aren't able to see it in that terms. And I don't think it's not because they don't want to. I think it's because they're educated not to. And that brings in the question of education. And that's an issue that I've been kind of I hold a different test or not test or a different view than many libertarians. But personally, I see firsthand that there's a lack of education for our youth, and a lot of that falls on public education, a great deal of that. But also, again, I think we as people really fail to see the ramifications of, the fatherless homes, the breakdown of the family, and what the lack of education at homes has manifested into. And when you throw into public education, the focus on traditional four-year college, and that's the hyper focus. And if you don't fit into that square block, then you're just not going to make it, bucko. That same idea, which Tennessee, personally, a state is trying to correct that wrong in CTE. I am happy to say that we've invested heavily in that. Not enough, in my opinion. And I personally push for more and a more diverse option for education. But again, I think to what you're talking about, people be able to speak on what you're talking and understand it, that you're not trying to take something away from them. You're just trying to get the control away from the government aspect of it, that people aren't able to differentiate that because that education isn't at the home level, and that's kind of been translated in a failure of education as far as the institution, which I'm not here to talk good about, especially on the college level. I think college in many ways is a money racket, especially when you consider federal backed loans. But I don't believe in shifting blame where it needs to be, and I think largely it's on the family that people aren't really raised to think for themselves. You know, they're taught someone's going to save us. We have to vote this way to save us, and I'm not sure how you get through that messaging on them, and that's the tricky part. That you got to keep having these conversations, and I tried my best. One thing that we try to do at the after party, and to no avail yet, is to try to get some type of debate going on. You know, we have some right wingers that come on that disagree. We had a right winger today disagreeing with Hammett. I saw that was a good little conversation. We've got a local liberal that's always kind of on our page, kind of putting his 2 cents in. And I would love to have a debate with those guys and let people see that you can have those conversations, and maybe somewhere in the mix of all that, you'll get that message one day, you know, like, hey, because this conversation or your content, I understand there's a different option besides just Republican and Democrat. And I have had those messages, very few and far between. I've not been doing this very long. I'm probably the youngest libertarian in this group right now. But I think those getting 10 messages like, hey, you're a douchebag, libertarians, blah, whatever, versus the one, you know what, that makes sense. You know, I understand. And I like this better than the two traditional options. I guess it's worth it. But we got to try to get those. Like I've reached out to the Black Israelites, not necessarily that I want to talk politics with them. I just want to have a discussion about what they talk about a lot about succession. Even though those guys are racist, they're very racist. I'm not going to sit here and be offended by it. I don't care. Cool. Have that view, but let's talk. Like how does succession look for you and your people? If you feel like you have a basis and you don't want to be ruled by the federal government, explain to me that process to you. You know, somehow we've got to get those really uncomfortable, weird conversations, like with the what is it, the outright libertarian LBGTQ crew and the Mises Caucus guys. We've got to get some weird and awkward conversations going on where we understand, like, look, we don't have to agree on everything. We have to make sure no one can dictate over us.
Yeah. So I'll say where I work at. I'm not going to say where, because I need to have a paycheck. But I talk to individuals about basic liberty-minded ideas, and the vast majority of people I work with are diehard Republicans, people who have been Republican for longer than I've been alive, at least twofold. And I say, okay, I said, you can be anti-American government without being anti-America. I said, I respect the shit out of Americans. I said, we're hateful, angry sons of bitches. You know, we decided, hey, we're going to cross this terrain that's uninhabitable. It has been uninhabitable for 300-400 years. You know, talking about pretty much everything west of Oklahoma, and we're going to find what's on the other end over there. You know, we may die, fine, but we're going to find out what's over there. You know, we have spent so many lives just doing stuff just to do it. You know, we have spent lives doing the right thing or trying to do the right thing, what we thought was the right thing. You know, World War II, we didn't have to be involved. We could have just stayed here in the U.S. You know, even after Pearl Harbor, we could have fortified our coastal defenses. Germany, Japan, Italy, they couldn't have even dreamed of coming over here. You know, there's just too many Americans that are just too crazy to want to invade. Thank God for that. But the U.S. government is always the problem. You know, we spent what was it, like 300,000 American lives winning the war in Europe. And as we've seen with Operation Paperclip, we brought over 200 Nazi scientists and SS members and the upper echelon of the Nazi Party to the U.S. to help us beat the communists. Why? Why did we even fight the damn war in the first place then? If we're gonna, if the government's gonna act on the behalf of the American people and do the worst thing possible, give amnesty to these people that systematically murdered 6 million humans, why in the hell did we fight that war? But
Who knows? It's people get crazy ideas sometimes. They think they got a bigger boogeyman down the road, so they cut a deal with the devil.
yeah, and it's no American would have signed off to that. The first thing Americans would have said is, why in the fuck did we fight this war then? If we're just going to bring them into the CIA, the FBI, if we're going to have almost 300 SS members in Eastern Germany, spying on, Russians, why did we fight with the Russians in the first place? Why did we fight against the Germans in the first place? And the problem is that, like I said, it's not being anti-American. I trust the American people. I don't trust the American government. It's shown time and time again that it can't be trusted. And if two people walk into my house right now, one says I'm from the government, one says I'm your neighbor down the road, I can tell you who I'm gonna throw the hell out first, because the person from the government obviously has somebody who's going to tell them to do something stupid, who's just not in my best interest. My neighbor, hell, I'll let them stay here. I don't give a shit. Cook food in my kitchen, sleep in the guest bedroom, whatever. But I don't trust the government, and I think most Americans feel that same way because the government has shown time and time again that it can't govern. It doesn't know how to. It just doesn't have the ability to govern in the best interest of the American people. For example,
I 100% agree with you, man. I 100% agree with you. What I will say about World War II is that, you have, obviously with the Japanese Imperial Navy and Air Force attacking Pearl Harbor, and that obviously galvanized us into the war and the brutality of that war, especially in the island hopping campaigns and what took place there. There's a lot to be said for that, but in the sense of not trusting the government, you can see it more transparent than ever. I mean, that's the scariest thing about that's the scariest thing about what's going on now, is that you have the most transparent time in history where, people openly just are okay with the government having so much overreach over them. Like, I don't care if they go through my computer. I don't care if they go through my phone. You know what? We probably did go to Iraq for nefarious reasons, but we're not going to say anything about it because, they killed a contractor in a bombing, or because Biden says that we need to bomb Syria, or because Trump says we need to bomb Syria, or because Obama says we need to up our drone strike counts. They willfully look away from it. And the way that they've done it is pure identity politics. And I'll give you a good example. I fell for it. I remember like when Black Lives Matter first happened, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I was outraged for a while. It really, it took a long time for me to come off. And I've had conversations talking about on this show, and then also in the past, and still keep in touch with those guys that, Americans that died haven't died for a particular political belief to be espoused. If the American idea of freedom is that everybody can say or do what they want, at a bar that they inflict bodily harm to someone else or some type of harm to their business. So you can express or protest how you feel as long as you're not infringing on someone else's rights to pursuit of happiness or hurting them. But they get people tricked in identity politics to hyper focus and be so outraged that you're not even focused on the blatant money laundering scheme that's being carried out by the CIA and federal government in the forms of foreign aid and unconstitutional wars. So that's the scary thing about it too, like and it's good to know the history of like the pathology of it when you look at from, especially, I'll go ahead and start from Vietnam. The blatant corruption that was going on there, and the alternative motive of a proxy war with Russia and China. And you go on down further into, the first Gulf War, and then you go into 9/11 and the current war on terrorism, and maybe the future domestic war on terrorism. People are so comfortable saying, yeah, I don't trust the government, but I'm going to vote for them anyways. Mm-hmm. And it's got to start on a local level, guys. Like, I don't know another way to fight this beast. And I definitely agree with Hammond about you want to run someone on the national level to win a presidency. The reason why I would say is that not necessarily that I think they ever could, but that national voice brings in a lot of attention. That's like a face of the Libertarian Party. So you want somebody that's bold and that can, steal some votes. I mean, that's good too. And, I want a winner or somebody that can possibly win, but I'm more worried about that messaging.
After you're right about bringing in the attention, having worked to try to find libertarians here in East Tennessee, they were scarce, over the, for a year or whatever it was. And then last year during the presidential campaign, they started popping out of the woodwork, all these people interested in the Libertarian Party, and it's been great. So that having that national voice brings the attention, and I'm finding people that are around here that I never knew existed before that actually are interested in the Libertarian Party. Found out I went to church with one. Didn't know that,
That's why my litmus test has always been, I think a lot of Democrats feel the same way and a lot of Republicans feel the same way. You got people on both ends of the spectrum who refuse to acknowledge these things, but reducing the federal government gives you the right, or gives you the ability to have the rights that you're given, which is, if, as I said before, if you want to create a commune, you can't do that and have a strong federal government, because the federal government will always do what it needs to make sure that it's bringing in a paycheck for itself. The commune is not going to generate revenue. It's not. But it's going to allow people to survive at whatever level, they can create for themselves. If you want pure capitalism, you can't have that and a strong federal government. As I was going to say earlier is, I think the one piece of legislation in modern history or most recent history is, where we bailed out Wall Street, that created the Tea Party movement. I think the approval rating for that was so low that I think the only thing that rivaled it would have been like if somebody introduced a slavery act in Congress right now. I think that'd be the only thing that would beat it. And it's just, it was so disapproved of by everybody on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats. Everybody hated it, and Congress said, yeah, get bent, go fuck yourself. We're going to do what we want to do.
That's what they've done with the bailouts too. I mean, most of the bailout money didn't go to the Americans' pocket. I mean, shouldn't have been doing the bailouts anyway, the stimulus stuff, but too much of it went overseas or to corporations.
Yeah, I mean,
how long before we see a UBI?
Yeah, no, we see it coming right here. Now. It's here. Yeah.
So you think this is like the start of it?
No, it's like already here. This most recent bill, this most recent stimulus package, actually, because my wife was talking about, she looked into some of that stuff. People with children are going to start receiving monthly stipends. I think, what is it, starting in 3 months or maybe next year, for just only having kids, just because you have kids.
It's like $300 a month per kid or something, isn't it?
Yeah. It's something like that. It's something like $300 a month, and it's going to be like $600 for me and my wife because we have 2 kids. That is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you don't have any personal accountability at that stage. I mean, why would I not have more kids? Because the bill doesn't actually dictate how much money you get based upon how many kids you have. So you could have 10 kids. That's $3,000 a month. It doesn't care how you treat them. It doesn't care if you feed them. It doesn't care if you change them.
And it's all based off the earned income tax credit, I believe, right? Or the child tax credit. I think it's the child tax credit that you normally it was like $2,100 deduction on your taxes, and that's gotten bumped up to I think $3,600, and you're gonna get it monthly now instead of as a cut in your taxes at the end of the year, which is going to mess people up on their taxes too, because they're going to be expecting to have that. Oh, I got 3 kids, I get that $6,300 deduction in my income. People are going to start owing more on their taxes, I think, once they start getting that child tax credit monthly instead of annually on their taxes.
Because nobody looks at tax law. Tax law is basically like taking your forehead and ramming it into a concrete wall as hard as you can for about an hour and a half, and then maybe you'll understand it. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I tried reading it, and it upset my soul. Like it disturbed me on a spiritual level, and it, and it's just universal basic income's here. It's already here. People have ignored it, and that's why I individually push for legislation based upon simplicity. So I think there needs to be legislation or an amendment, like a physical constitutional amendment that says that if you pass a bill, it has to be written in plain English, number one, and it has to be a one topic idea. So, like, if you're going to try and introduce a bill into Congress, it has to be on that one particular item. So, like, say you want to pass a tax on flushing your toilet, like, what we already have. I'm not going to go into the topic, but let's say you want to create a tax. Every time you flush your toilet, you have to pay 15 cents. The bill can only encompass that. You cannot have these ginormous 9,000 page omnibus bills that say 100 million things, but will say, "Oh, it's only a tax on flushing your toilet." Who's going to read a 9,000 page legal document? There is no lawyer in the country I could afford to pay to read a 9,000 page legal document.
And that's what it is. They never get them in enough time to read. Even if somebody wanted to sit down and read those, they don't get them in enough time to read them before they actually have the vote usually.
Yeah.
They'll know by their bank accounts in a couple of weeks. Don't worry. They'll know. They'll get notifications.
Yeah. And it's just, if you give, and it's like it was mentioned before, is Americans aren't educated enough on this stuff in a lot of ways. Yeah, because they don't want to sit down and read a 300 page document. I don't want to. Put it on. Most legislation could be put on one page. If it can't be put on one page, it's probably bad.
Probably. I always like Thomas Massey's every session he introduces a bill to get rid of the Department of Education at the federal level. And it reads, the Department of Education will cease to exist on December 31st, 2021, or whatever it is. That's the whole bill right there, one sentence. And we need more of that, Give me a short bill that can be done, like you say, in less than a page.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't do that and you have to put it in such obscure language, you obviously don't know how to govern. I mean, that's really what it is. And Americans, if you ask them, I don't give a shit what political affiliation they claim. If you say, I want to introduce a bill that says that each bill has to be introduced on one page or less, most Americans, I would say 99.99% of Americans would agree with that. The only people that will disagree are lobbyists, like federal lobbyists and politicians, because, they're the ones that gain the most from this obscure omnibus bullshit. But if you can put like you said, declaring the Department of Education will cease to exist on, March 17th, 2021. That is a very simple bill. There's no obscurity to it. You understand what the bill says. It doesn't say that we will defund the Department of Education starting, March 17th, 2021, up until, March 21st, 2121. But there's like 3,000 words in between those two sentences. Nobody's going to read that. But if you put it in plain English, if you look, okay, so let me backtrack here. If you look at the Constitution, how much fluff is in the Constitution? It is very simplistic and to the point. The reason being is they did not want any controversy, to float around what they were saying. It's very, very to the point because they wanted people to understand, even 200, 300, 400 years from now, what the hell they were saying. That's why it's not a 9,000 page document. It's maybe a 20-page document because some of the amendments and some of the original text is a little bit longer and it's in cursive because, millennials, some of my people can't read cursive because Department of Education sucks. But it's very simplistic and it gets very straight to the point. First Amendment is you can't tell people what they can say. You can't tell people what they can practice religiously. And you can't tell people that they can't assemble to protest this bullshit government. Simple. Second Amendment says you have the right to own guns. Period. Stop. Full sentence. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th Amendment. Same thing. It's all 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of text. That's it. It's very to the point. And we have convinced ourselves as Americans that we need these omnibus packages that have all this bullshit in it. It's all fluff and it's all bullshit that pads their pockets. And that's why we are in the shape we're in. No different with the stimulus package. Why did we need to send $200 million to Iran for fucking gender studies? They don't give a shit. They don't.
No, I could have put that money to good use.
Yeah, me too.
And my wife told me that with our most recent stimulus, I'm not allowed to buy a gun with it. So I guess 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right? I was disappointed.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Look. Bring your wife over to the house tomorrow. We'll fix that problem.
I think
we'll take her out shooting, and you'll be able to buy whatever the hell gun you want to.
You gotta tell her it's a gun for her.
Yeah,
she's got one. She's happy with it. I think she's more inclined to
no, she needs another one because it's going to be at this point. If the UBI takes an effect and the dollar crashes, you'll have another piece for barter. That'd bring a lot, dude.
Yeah, she's like gun, bathroom, remodel, gun, bathroom, remodel. So, yeah,
you
know.
You shit in the woods, you're good. I can't. I have no advice for you now.
She'd probably say you can't buy ammo for it anyway. So,
well, I mean, she's not wrong there. But so I did want to touch on one last thing before we hop off tonight because we've gone a little bit over the hour. So, the government speaking on inflation. That's a good topic. Something I did want to cover tonight. Crypto. Either one of y'all in crypto?
A little bit.
I'm not.
Okay. Here's my sad, pathetic crypto story. In 2012, I was working from home doing some computer contracting, and I heard about this thing called Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, I could mine that. That sounds interesting. So then I sent my computer off to start mining Bitcoin. And I don't know how much I got at the time, but then I read that it's bad for your graphics card. It could burn it up over time. And I was like, I can't afford that. So I stopped. So then all of a sudden, a few years ago, it's worth a lot of money. So essentially I took that, what I had then, and I added a couple $100 when Bitcoin was at 2,000 or was it 20,000 years ago. And I think I've got like $1,200 worth now, but I did buy $20 worth of Bitcoin today on one of the stock trading apps. Mm-hmm. So I heard the idea that you buy it because it's always going up and down. So if you pick a point and you buy it and you wait till it gets like 5% above that or something, then sell it and then wait till it drops back down again, then buy it again, that you could slowly accumulate cash. Of course, when you're doing $20 at a time at 5%, I want to make like $1 every couple of weeks. So by the end of the year, I might be able to afford a half a box of ammo or something.
Yeah, I gotta ask a question. And I don't understand, because this is like the premise of Bitcoin. I understand that ultimately you hold higher faith into Bitcoin than, say, the dollar. What can you physically buy with Bitcoin? Like, what can you purchase? Like, what are a lot of places that will accept that?
I will
Tesla.
tell you this, that a lot of companies actually do accept crypto. They just don't advertise it because
Right.
the more you advertise it, the more the federal government wants a piece of it. They want to be able to sell it to people, like sell products to people using Bitcoin because it's not taxed, it's not regulated. You can
It is
buy stuff.
taxed. It's
Well,
taxed now. When you buy
well,
and sell, it's taxed, I think now. The
uh,
IRS
it,
wants their cut of the profit or loss, I think.
there is a way around it. You can buy direct without paying a tax on it. But the tax that you pay is the transfer fee. So
Gotcha.
Zeb, I don't know if you know anything about the blockchain. The blockchain basically is uh, large groups of people who maintain the encryption for cryptos. Um, Basically, you pay them to move money around the crypto. Um, that's really the tax that you pay to do that stuff. This is a 4 hour long podcast on crypto. Um, I can send you some good stuff on it. I use Litecoin a lot. What the hell? My camera just went out. But um, you could yeah. So I use Litecoin because it has a lower transfer fee. Um, but uh, Bitcoin has a higher transfer fee because so many people are into it. You know, they'll get excited about, Bitcoin's making a run, what blah 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 whatever. Um, but uh, there are quite a few companies that you can actually purchase stuff with crypto. It's just not as prominent as it should be. Um, and it's just I, me personally, I think crypto should be the future because it's not regulated by the government. Number one, or isn't yet regulated by the government. And number two, it there's a lot more people that hold those currencies accountable. Um, and
You can't mass produce them either. Like Bitcoin, what is it, 21 million? There can never be more than, I think that's the number, 21 million Bitcoins.
yeah,
So they can't go out and make new ones. So it's a fixed quantity, and in fact, it's going to be a shrinking quantity as people lose their wallet and the money's not there. Unlike the dollar, what 40% of the dollars ever put into circulation were put into circulation in the past year. So, that inflating the currency leads to price inflation. And you're not going to get that with Bitcoin because you can't inflate Bitcoin.
now there are cryptos that you can do that with. There are
Right.
cryptos that are generated. Um, but it really depends on doing a slight bit of research because most of this stuff is pretty open. When you go to anywhere that you can physically buy physical crypto, they'll have what's called white pages, um, and it basically breaks down for you in very plain terms what it is, the intent behind it, and what it's supposed to do. Um, Litecoin was designed uh, to replace Bitcoin because it's easier to mine. Number one, and number two, it's cheaper to transfer. Um, that's why I'm big on it. Most people will just say, "Shut the hell up. We don't care. Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin." But um,
The transaction fees with Bitcoin are slow too, aren't they? It takes longer to process.
yeah, Bitcoin's typically 30 minutes or more. It depends on how busy the blockchain is. Litecoin, I think the longest I've had, and I got a notice that the blockchain was very busy. I think it took 15 minutes, but it still cost a very minor fraction of what Bitcoin does. I think I've lost approximately $200 in Bitcoin just transferring stuff between my brokerage account and my wallet, and then you know buying stuff from people, whatever, whatever. Litecoin, I think I've lost maybe $10, and I've spent way more money in Litecoin.
They do have ATMs for cryptos now. I saw somebody posted on Facebook that there was one in Jefferson City, Tennessee.
I believe that. I can see that. I think what's really ironic is that the federal government. Oh well, there's a lot of nefarious stuff going on with crypto. Yeah, but if you take one of those drug sample kits, with the swab and the test tube and everything, what is it? 5 and 6 bills in circulation have trace amounts of cocaine on it. When was the last time you seen somebody take a Bitcoin, roll it up, and snort coke? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but by government standards, they say drugs are bad. I mean, their fiat, their physical currency is used to buy drugs far more than crypto is on a large scale.
Absolutely.
But Zeb, Robert, you gentlemen, I appreciate y'all coming on, and
Thanks for having us.
I really would love to do this again. Whenever we all three get a chance to sit down and do this again, I had a lot of fun, and I think we got through a lot of really good information.
Absolutely, man. Love to. Maybe we'll play a good host and have you on the after party some point.
That's a mistake right there. Bringing me on y'all's podcast.
We need to. I'll tell you what we need to do. We need to get together in East Tennessee and have a big shoot one day. I know we're all. I'd say I would imagine the vast majority of us are probably gun lovers. I know ammo is hurting right now, but hopefully maybe it'll rebound. But I would like to get the eastern of Tennessee, eastern area Tennessee guys together for some type of shoot. I think that would be awesome.
Well, the best I can offer you is on April 3rd, I think at 7 p.m., we're all going to be meeting for the regional Libertarian Party. We'll be meeting at I think it's called the Axe House of Kingsport. We'll be throwing some axes. If you want to get your Viking blood pumping, we'll be throwing some axes on April 3rd.
Is that's a Saturday, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Oh man, we've got a big night shoot that night. I saw that. I remember I saw you post that, and I was interested in going, but I checked my schedule, and we're testing out a bunch of our stuff. Pull it off here.
Oh, he's cranking out the nods.
Yeah.
Well, they're the poor man nods. They're the psionics. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but they're a digital night vision, and they're mine. I paid $300 for. I painted it myself, kind of put some add-ons to it, but I'm kind of doing it to prove a point that you don't have to drop $1,300 or $2,000 or $3,000 or however expensive you want to. You don't have to drop all that to shoot effectively at night. I think these will hold up well, but we're going to record the whole ordeal, the whole range, and I'm going to post it to the after party and let the people kind of review and make their own decisions on it. Because if you want to get into night shooting or just shooting in general, a lot of people will tell you that you have to spend X amount of money or have this brand or this is what you have to have. And that's not true. It's more about training and knowing your gear and having it comfortable versus the amount of money you spend on it. So I hate want to miss that, man. My bad. I went off on a tangent there, but
it's all right. It's I'm not gonna force nobody to do nothing. I'm not.
We'll definitely set something up further when the summer gets in. It gets warmer.
I'm planning to be there on that. I haven't got it finalized yet, but I'm planning to be there for that axe throwing.
Yeah, I've got somebody. I'm a political figure. I'm working on trying to get there. I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to promise anything I can't deliver on. But right now, it looks like it's going to be a fun time, even if it's just 10 or 12 of us. The only thing I do ask from people is please reserve your spot in advance because we've got 20 spots reserved. We have to pay for those 20 spots, whether or not 20 people show up. More people show up. If they didn't reserve, I'll turn you away because it's not my business. But Yeah, but it looks like it's going to be a fun time. This is something I've personally wanted to do. A lot of people have been real interested in it and just haven't been able to do it. But yeah. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate y'all coming on. Like I said, it's been a lot of fun. Y'all giving a lot of good insight. Getting out some good discussion, and I hope we can do some more
Have a good one.
too. But